Hey everyone, this is the Love of Cinema podcast. We like to talk movies. If you like to talk movies too, you come to the right place.
Aatish, why I agreed to write was because Sanjay Gupta came to me with the story. Because this was perhaps the only story where you imagine combining Sholay and Diwar in one subject, in one film. Aatish was Sholay meets Diwar. If you remember Aatish, there is a brother and there is a friend. The hero has this dilemma whether to side with the brother or side with the friend. His loyalty is with the friend because of whom he is what he is. And of course, he has the brother who will become a cop. So in Diwar, the issue was between the two brothers, okay, the cop and the smuggler. In Sholay, the story was between these two friends.
Hey everyone, this is Himanshu, and this is the Love of Cinema podcast. Our guest today is someone who has written some of the biggest films of the last 35 years. N. Chandra's Tezaab, Subhash Ghai's Saudagar, Sanjay Gupta's Aatish, Aks, Rang De Basanti, Delhi 6, and Yalgaar. These are just some of the films from Kamlesh Pandey's long illustrious career as a screenwriter. But before that, if you're a first-time listener, do check out prior episodes of the podcast. You can find all episodes on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you enjoy organic conversations centered on Indian cinema and streaming shows, Love of Cinema podcast was created for people just like you. So do consider subscribing. Also, please do rate and review the podcast in Apple Podcasts, as that will help others with similar taste discover this podcast. So if you liked the episode, please rate and review us and help us spread the word. Back to today's episode. One of Kamlesh Pandey's early films was Tezaab, the biggest hit of 1988. Tezaab, of course, is a well-known film, and the chartbuster Ek Do Teen has a separate fan base of its own. Tezaab is also an interesting film because it pays homage to Raj Kapoor's Awara and riffs on Walter Hill's 1984 action musical Streets of Fire. Kamlesh talked about his admiration for Walter Hill and taking inspiration from Streets of Fire, as well as writing Tezaab as a tribute to Awara. For example, borrowing the treatment used for an antagonist, played by Kane Singh in Awara, and subverting it by using it for the protagonist, played by Anil Kapoor, in Tezaab. If you'll recall, Munna's introductory scene in the film has people lining up by the sides of the lane in fear when Munna enters the lane. It is a direct reference to almost an identical scene from Awara, where Jagga walks through a bylane. We talked about Tezaab's non-linear narrative and how the trial show of Tezaab was a huge disaster because of that very non-linear narrative. It's a juicy story which you don't want to miss. We also chatted about Aks, Aatish, and Delhi 6. He shared some very interesting stories behind those films. Did you know Delhi 6 was originally conceived to be something along the lines of My Big Fat Greek Wedding, set in Delhi? I also asked him about writing for Feroz Khan and what it was like working with him. Again, he had some rather interesting things to say about Feroz Khan the man and his cinema. We also talked about how writing for mainstream Hindi cinema has evolved over the years, and why he believes 90% of the cinema is either ego trips or made to pay the bills, leaving only 10% which can be considered genuine good cinema. A very smart man with strong opinions and interesting takes on almost everything. Here's my chat with Kamlesh Pandey. Hi Kamlesh, how are you doing?
How are you? How are you, Himanshu? Great
I'm
meeting
doing
you
great.
across 7 continents and so on.
Yes,
All
yes.
thanks to Zoom and thanks to internet.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Fantastic, fantastic.
First of
Yeah.
all, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast and chatting with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Anytime.
You have a extended body of work. You come from an advertising background, and obviously we all know
Yeah.
about your films and television. And
Huh.
today, in the interest of time, I wanted to focus on few of those films so that we'll be
Sure.
able to go a
Yeah.
little deeper because
Yep. Yep.
whatever we will try to do, we'll try to do in 45 minutes to an
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, shall we start?
Yeah. Yeah. Please. Yeah.
Great, great. So, Kamlesh, you have been writing Hindi films since the mid 80s. Hindi films
Almost from
have
86. From 86, I think.
86,
From 1986, 87. Yeah. Yeah.
right. And Hindi films have come a long way since that time over the course of the last 35
Yep.
years.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Even a hardcore mainstream Hindi film of today is
Yes. Yes.
substantially different from ones made 30,
Absolutely.
35 years ago. So, my
Absolutely.
first
Absolutely.
question to you was what has remained constant in your opinion, specifically in terms of writing for a mainstream Hindi cinema?
Basically, the emotions. Basically, the emotions, because we are a very emotional country. We are not exactly very logical, in spite of the IT boom and everything else. All the engineers all over the world from India. We are basically a very emotional country, and uh, in our grammar of storytelling, okay, emotions matter a lot. Not so much logic, but emotions, and emotions have their own logic. Very funnily, emotions too have their own logic. Now, what happened was that earlier, if you go back to the 50s, okay, we were just independence. We had got independence, and we are full of hope and aspirations and ideals and looking forward to the future. And so, but somehow, all those hopes were sort of they they were sort of they end up being illusions, and we became a rather disillusioned country, frustrated, angry sometimes. And that's why, for example, if you see a film like Avara, I rate that the modern Indian cinema more or less began with Avara, Raj Kapoor's Avara. Avara was in fact my own film Tezaab is a tribute to Avara. I don't know if many people have noticed it, but
Yes, yes.
I define Tezaab as Avara of 90s. In fact, when Mr. N. Chandra came to me with this whole idea, you know, we were friends and he used to live next to my office. And we were actually brought together for something else, some other film which never happened. But we became friends, and he one fine day he comes, he goes, look, I have got this idea of, called Tezab. And he briefly told me what the story is. I said, Chandu, I mean, we are friends. Chandu, Tezaab could be Avara of 90s. So he was quite surprised. He said, "Ki, what do you mean Avara of 90s?" So I said, look, if Raj Kapoor had been alive in 1987, 88, when we were making Tezaab, and he wanted to make Avara, he would have made Tezaab. So there are many scenes in Tezaab, if you have seen the film, which are tribute to Raj Kapoor's Avara. For example, just I'll give you just one or two examples, because we don't have much time. The introduction of Anil Kapoor in
Oh,
Tezaab,
yes. Oh,
the
yes.
heroes, that exactly the introduction of the villain, K.N. Singh in Avara. And what I wanted to say, indirectly was that in uh, in 25 years, after independence, the introduction of the villain has become the introduction of hero in our country, and that is a very big statement. Where have we come? In 50s, what used to be introduction of the villain, now in 80s, is it become introduction of the hero? The hero, the villain has become the hero. That's one example. That and exactly the same shot. He enters the basti, and the road gets totally deserted. People go back in the house. The windows are shut. The doors are shut. The street becomes empty. Everybody is scared. Exactly the same shot which is in Avara with Mr. Kane Singh, the villain. Same thing. The another scene. Between Anil and Madhuri. Remember in the scene, if you have seen Avara on the beach between Raj Kapoor and Nargis, where she calls him, you are an Avara, you are a vagabond, you are this, you are that,
Right.
you are a real crook, and he gets very upset. He said, okay, the rich man's daughter calling me a poor guy, all these, abuses literally, he holds her by his hair, by her hair. And what do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Damn it! And the violence. It's a love scene, but the violence in that gesture is amazing. That is the violence and the anger of the poor India, the India who is looking up, who has no hope, who has no opportunities, who don't know, who doesn't know where to go and where to find jobs, etc. The young India of 50s was at that moment. Here is a rich man's daughter, adopted daughter, calling all kind of names to this guy, and this guy grabs her by her hair. Who do you think you are? And that anger was not just the anger of Raj Kapoor or Raju from a film. That anger was the anger of every young Indian coming from a poor family who has no hopes, no future literally. In Tezaab, for example, there is the same scene almost between Anil Kapoor and Madhuri, when Madhuri says, I'm not interested in you. I'm going to do what my father is going to ask me to do it. And Anil Kapoor grabs her hair. He said, what do you mean? We're going to do that? I'll kill you and I'll kill myself. The violence in that scene, it's a love scene on a hill in Tezab, and the violence is the same. So Tezab was just a tribute to Avara. So what happened was that the storytelling has changed from the 50s. In the 50s, it was still quite respectable, amazing, because we had great writers. We had writers coming from Urdu literature who brought their skill and craft to cinema.
Right.
All of the Khaja Ahmad Abbas, Bedi Ismat Chughtai, all of them, Wazahat Mirza, you name it, they were all there. And and that was the golden age of Indian cinema, the 50s. But that's my own definition, that from 1955 and from Awara to 1965 to guide, that whole decade is the golden age of Indian cinema. We never got a chance to repeat that decade ever again. We never got that quality of cinema that we delivered in that whole one decade. Imagine, look at it. Avara, C420, Do Aankhein Bara Haath, Mughal Azam, Bandhani, Devdas. I mean, almost everybody. Raj Kapoor, Gurudat, Pyasa, Kagaz Ke Phool, Sahib Bibi Gulam, Guide, all the way to Guide. Imagine this one whole decade with all these old classics, what we call now classics. Mother India. I mean, amazing cinema we created. And then what happened that those writers, for example, they either got too old or they died. And we never got a team to replace them. Because writing is the first element in any film, any cinema. In fact, I normally like to state to the writer that writer is the first star of a film or a TV show, because before the writer, a film or a TV show is just a blank piece of paper. What happened was that after 1965, a lot of unskilled people started they started trying to fill up that blank piece of paper. They were not writers. They had come maybe to become an actor. They couldn't become an actor, or they couldn't succeed as an actor. So they became writers. They came to become a director or somebody else. Almost anybody and everybody was becoming a writer. And that reflected in the kind of stupid films we produced in 70s, in 80s, and so on. And the storytelling suffered. Somehow we survived because of the music. Music remained somehow, in spite of all the great guys not working anymore. The music still was there, it was working. And the emotions were, they became too melodramatic, but they were still there. and what many people call formula. You know, the family relationships, happening, that remained, but the the creativity disappeared. What we had in the 50s, we lost in 70s and 80s, completely lost. And ever since then, we have been trying to reclaim it, trying to revive it, trying to bring it back. Somehow, not all of us, maybe a few of us, some of us, we are trying, because the heart of our cinema is emotion. The storytelling of our cinema is emotions, basically because our cinema comes from our folk theater. Unlike Hollywood, our cinema comes from folk theater, and folk theater comes from somebody called Bharat Muni's. Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra. I must share this story with you. Amazing story. I mean, it's a mythological story, but I I totally believe in it because the meaning is incredible. I'm not saying it is historically a fact. We don't give a damn for history. What is history? History is one man's opinion about something that he doesn't know about. History can be so subjective and so different. If Hitler had won the Second World War, the history of the war would have been very different. So it depends who's the winner. He decides what the history is going to be. So who gives a damn for history? So the story goes that, after these four Vedas were written, Rig Ved, Samved, Atharvaved, Yajurved, Brahma got very worried. Brahma said, oh my God, these fantastic books, these four Vedas, but they are for intellectuals, they are for scholars. What about the common man? How will the common man learn to live, the art of living? How will the common man get his value system, his aspirations, his hopes, his desires? What about the common man? Because he will have no access to the Vedas. Only the intellectuals will have access to the Vedas. So Brahma announced, as the story goes, that look, guys, please do something for the common man. And all the rishis, at that point in time, they got to work. And one rishi, Bharat Muni, he wrote Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, the first treatise in the universe on the art of storytelling, of theater, the whole grammar. In fact, when Whitfield was in India in the year 2007, Hollywood's most famous script writing teacher,
Sure.
he has been doing workshops all over the world, Whitfield. He was in India in the year 2007, and he has been going around with about this three-act structure of script writing, three-act. So I used to joke with him, look, I'm coming to US, to Hollywood, and I will shut your shop because my Bharat Muni he doesn't believe in three-act structure. We have a totally different grammar of storytelling. So anyway, that's only for the joke. So uh, from that Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, when he wrote it, Brahma was thrilled. My God, Bharat, you have done a great job. And he gave a blessing. And that blessing I must share with you because it's a beautiful blessing. The blessing is in Sanskrit. I'll just speak the lines first and then I will translate it. The blessing is Bharataina mitaste sham prakhyato bharta vaya yadidam bharate varshe manuna shuprakashitam. Brahma says कि Bharat यार तूने you have done such a great job, you have done this Natya Shastra, the grammar of storytelling, that from now on, at that time India was called Aryavart. As a nation, we were called Aryavart. So he says कि from now on, this country, because you are Bharat, this country will be called Bharat after you, which literally means the country of entertainers, the country of storytellers. So the word Bharat actually means the country of storytellers. And which is why, in our country, whether it's mythology or folk tales or the Panchtantra, Mahabharata or Ramayana, we are perhaps the richest nation on earth in terms of stories and storytelling.
Kamlesh, Tezaab had a non-linear narrative with nested
Yeah, yeah,
flashbacks, which was quite
yeah.
uncommon for the time.
I must share a very interesting story with you. How we
Please,
work in Bollywood, or not Bollywood. I hate the word Bollywood. I would love to say Indian
Hindi
cinema.
cinema,
Yeah,
yes.
Hindi cinema. Yeah, what happened was after we completed the shoot and everything, and we had the first what we call the trial show. For the family of the actors and so on. And the wife of the hero said, I can't understand the film. I don't know what's going on. And I don't blame her because for the first time, we had used a flashback within a flashback. Madhuri's flashback inside Anil Kapoor's flashback.
Right.
So so structurally, it was not easy to understand. Or people who are used to a rather linear narrative, for them it will be not easy to understand and appreciate. So this lady, and we were very worried then because she was the wife of the big star, and we were so worried. So we re-edited the film in a linear fashion, and we hated it. My God, it's so boring. It's so predictable. I said, Chandu, I hate it. Let's go back. Let's take the risk. So we went back to our old edit, which this lady had hated. You'll be surprised that on the night of the premiere of the film, I was working on something with Shekhar Kapoor. We were doing writing a film. I was writing a film to launch Bobby Deol, which finally never took off. But we were very close, me and Shekhar. And Shekhar, I invited to the premiere, and he said, "Kamlesh, I can't give more than 8 weeks to your film because your film is so bloody hard. It sort of is so. It's not easy to watch. It doesn't let you relax. It grabs you by the neck, by the scruff of your neck, and it puts you down on the seat. Damn it, watch me." This is very and the 8 weeks because of the song, because the song Ek Do Teen had become a huge hit. So because of the song, this your film will run for 8 weeks only. So finally, when the film did 100 weeks, I asked Shekhar, Shekhar, you had said 8 weeks. We have just done 100 weeks. What do you say? Of course, he had no answer to that because actually he was on the top after Mr. India. He was very popular at that time. So yes, it happens that you know sometimes when you want to do something different and you decide to go by the popular opinion, you will never be able to make a good cinema. Never. You have to go with your own gut feeling. So I said, Nandu, let's go ahead, go back to what we had done, and we will keep it this way. So structurally, Tezaab was perhaps the first film which used this the flashback within a flashback structure. So of course, it complicated the story a bit, but people loved it because I think the audience is not a moron. In advertising, we were told that advertising is not the audience, the consumer is not a moron, she's your wife. The consumer is not a moron, she's your wife. So respect the consumer. So in the cinema, I always believe that I respected the audience. They appreciate if you give them something a little harder to respond to. You try to pitch your story just a bit above their head, not too far ahead above the head, because then they'll just give up. My God, I can't understand this film and so on. No, slightly above their head you pitch, and they will reach out and get it, and they will respect you because you have respected their intelligence.
Right.
So which is what we did try to do in Tezaab. Okay, we don't go by popular opinion. We'll do what we think is right. Yeah, yeah.
And Kamlesh, Tezaab had strong similarities with Walter Hill's Streets of Fire. Were you and N. Chandra always fans of that movie?
I have been a big fan of Walter Hill right from the beginning, especially of his writing. The way he writes his screenplay, almost monosyllables. He he hardly ever writes a full sentence in describing a scene. His words are pictures. I mean, there's in fact the first Alien script was done by him. The Hollywood film Alien.
Yes.
Walter Hill was the first writer who wrote that Alien script. Afterwards, James Cameron, and so on and so forth. And I was so zapped. My God, what a man, what a writer. He uses just single words, and the words are pictures, are visuals. So any director worth his salt can exactly understand what is to be done. So yes, that whole sequence of kidnapping, Madhuri from the stage, that whole sequence, was inspired by that sequence in Streets of Fire. The way Madhuri is kidnapped by the goons from the stage after she had done performed a song. Yes, it was absolutely.
Right.
Hmm.
Now, let's move on since we spent a lot of time on
Yeah, yeah,
Tezaab.
yeah, yeah,
But Aatish is one of my favorite films, and we got to
yeah,
talk about the dialogue in Aatish. And then I would also
yeah,
love to hear some anecdotes from you. But the
yeah.
first dialogue which comes to mind when we talk about Aatish is the simple three-word line: Nawab, akele akele. Like,
Aatish, why I agreed to write was because Sanjay Gupta came to me with the story, because this was perhaps the only story where you imagine combining Sholay and Diwar in one subject, in one film. Aatish was Sholay meets Diwar. If you remember Aatish, there is a brother and there is a friend. The hero has this dilemma whether to side with the brother or side with the friend. His loyalty is with the friend because of whom he is what he is. And of course, he has the brother who will become a cop. So in Diwar, the issue was between the two brothers, okay, the cop and the smuggler. In Sholay, the story was between these two friends who are sacrificing for each other and so on. Atish was combining both emotions in one film, in Atish, and that's why I love the idea. I said I'll write it. The problem that happened in Atish, why it didn't work as well, and how much maybe perhaps it's the right time to share it. I think it was miscast. It was miscast because the role which should have gone to Sanjay Dutt went to Aditya Pancholi, and the role which went to the brother Atul Agnihotri, I think, yeah, he did that role. I think the film suffered because of miscasting. Otherwise, the script and everything else, I still remember that there was a very important dialogue in the film which explained the whole dilemma. When the friend, when the friend comes to know that my friend is going to side with the brother, the cop, he has this great line. He said, "Dost hum chunte hain. We choose our friends. We do not choose our brother. We just happen to be born from the same parents. That's it. He said, there's no accident. We do not choose our brother, but we choose our friends. And today, you have chosen your brother. What have you done? What happened to our loyalty?" So that line became quite popular. That we choose our friends, because we like, you know, हम दोस्त चुनते हैं अपनी खुशी से, अपनी मर्जी से, बट भाई तो इत्तेफाक होता है. Brother is a coincidence. Friend is a choice you choose with your, with a common interest and so on. And that was the whole conflict of the story of Tatish. That between the brother and the friend, what do you choose and why? And the story was trying to tell, well, not in so many words, that what you choose is more important than what you happen to be born with. The friend is more important than the brother. The relationship with the friend is far more important than the relationship with the brother. But just because he happens to be your brother, you have a certain obligation. to support him, to to fight for him. So in a way, it could have been much better if the casting has been right. Because Sanju had done Khalnayak for me. So Sanju was ideal for that role, which finally was done by Aditya Pancholi. And for me, I think it was miscasting. If the whole thing has been switched around, Sanju doing that role of the friend and you know other way around, perhaps things would have been much better, much different.
That film, though,
Yeah,
still has a huge cult following, and
yeah,
especially the
yeah,
lines and dialogues are very popular because they're very pulpy and they're classic,
yeah,
iconic lines.
yeah.
Another dialogue from the film, which I like a lot, is "ये mouth organ और ये gun,
Ah,
दोनों में एक ही लोहा लगता है, फिर भी इन दोनों में कितना फर्क है." So all
yeah,
those lines there, they're very pulpy, and for my generation, I mean, we grew up in the '90s, so
yeah.
Aatish is one of those films that we fondly remember. Now, I heard one of your talks where you said Ux essentially makes the argument that good and evil are complementary; they complement and complete each other. And
Yeah.
you drew upon the discussion
Actually,
around.
yeah. There is a story behind Ux also. Ux is not my story. Actually, I had written another screenplay called Samjhauta Express to launch Abhishek Bachchan. Abhishek Bachchan was going to be introduced with that script, Samjhauta Express. But then JP Datta came with Refugee. And at that point in time, JP Datta was a far bigger director, far more popular because of his film Powder doing business, big business. And Rakesh Oprakash Mehra was almost, at that time, almost a nobody. So I was asked to look, let Abhishek do Refugee and let's hold Samjhauta Express for the moment because they both are India-Pakistan subject. So at that point in time, Rakesh and Amitabh Bachchan had this story idea of Ox. Now, I was not fully convinced with the story because superficially, if you look at it, it is a typically ghost story. A ghost occupying someone, something that you watch in some horror show somewhere easily. But how to convert it with to something much deeper, something which has a philosophical depth, something like that. So I said, okay, and I was sort of, it was to me a kind of a consolation prize. Ux to me was a consolation prize because my Samjhauta Express was shelved. So I said, fine, no problem. And uh, Amit ji was getting this opportunity to do a negative role, which he had never done before. That he was going to play hero and the villain both in the same film. Ux. So I said, okay, let me try to do some philosophical stuff in there to give this story a depth, which is superficially almost like a ghost story. The ghost of the villain, Raghavan, occupies the hero, and the hero becomes the villain, Amitabh Bachchan. So I said, okay, let me, because and that's why the Indian philosophy. In India, Indian mythology, there is no Satan, unlike Christianity and other faiths. Indian spirituality or Indian religion or Indian mythology, there is no Satan as such, and we don't look down on the evil. Evil is evil. Good and evil are just the reflections of each other. Reflections of each other. There can't be evil without good, and there can't be good without evil. So the evil is a kind of a blackboard against which you have to write the good in white letter, white chalk. For example, let's say Ravan is the blackboard against whom the name of Ram is shining bright and white. If there was no blackboard of Ravan, there will not be Ram either. Ram will disappear. Ram is there because of Ravan. If you remove Ravan, there is no Ram at all. If you remove evil, there is no good either. How will you compare? It's a very deep thought. It's a very deep Indian thought that what we call all the negativity and all the evil and bad things and so on, They are part of the life. Life is always sort of, it can't be just one sided. It needs, the other side, the complementary, or the, uh, there are two sides of the same coin. I mean, ultimately, what the Indian philosophy says that good and evil, sadness and happiness are two sides of the same coin. If you hold the coin in your hand, looking at the surface that, oh, I'm looking at good, you forget that under the good there is evil waiting to come out. Under the happiness there is sadness waiting to come out. So that is a thought. And not only that, I did something very mischievous. I don't know if you remember the film. Whenever Raghavans does a murder, okay, whenever he kills someone, he uses a line from the Bhagavad Gita. What
Yes,
does he say?
it's a
Well,
very
he
popular
says
line.
कि ना कोई मारता है ना कोई मरता है, मैं तो निमित्त मात्र हूं, इसलिए please don't mind it. And I was hoping that somebody in the audience will get up and say, "What are you doing? You're putting Gita in the mouth of the villain, not even the hero, villain." I said, I have my own personal interpretation of Gita. Of course, in the Gita, of course, it appears in a very different context. But yes, imagine if this line, I try to bring some depth into the story. But it had some issues because, A, I think it was far ahead of its time, perhaps a decade ahead of its time. If Ox had been made today, it would have been a huge success today. But at that time, I think we were too ahead of our time, and we were experimenting. We were experimenting with a new kind of story and so on and so forth. But it didn't work as well as RDB did, Rang De Basanti and so on. So ये था कि हाँ भाई, it happens sometimes that you want to do something different and you forget that you are actually far ahead of your time. So do not expect the same success. It happened with Kagaz Ka Phool by Guru Dutt. I was in school when the film was released in 1960, I think, yeah, 1960-61. It ran for two shows. The audience broke down the furniture of the theater and it had to be taken off. Today, that film is taken to be a classic, a great, and he's rated as one of the, most important Indian film directors, along with the likes of Orson Welles and so on and so forth. I mean, he's almost labeled as India's Orson Welles, Guru Dutt. But it happens that sometimes you do something which is far ahead of your time. So you can't expect the audience to rise up to the occasion and reach out and relate to your story. It happens.
This was your first collaboration with Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra, and obviously you did the massive.
Not first. Actually, we had done a kind of docudrama called Mamoli Ram, which was basically the story of Amul Butter. You know,
Oh, okay.
yeah. And actually, we had met this guy, uh, Dr. Varghese, who is started the cooperative movement in Gujarat called Anand, and he is the father of
Amul.
of the full Amul movement. So we went to meet him, and the stories he told us, it was an amazing story. I said it was, I think, the golden jubilee of Amul. It was almost the golden jubilee of Amul, and they wanted to make an 8 minute kind of a documentary on the golden jubilee of Amul, the 50 years. But when I heard the story from Dr. Varghese, I said, "My God, what a story! Let's do a docudrama." So we ended up doing a film which is about 100-minute film on that called Mamuli Ram. How this one man transformed the whole community with his vision and idea. That was the beginning, and then of course, ups happened, and then RDB and so on, Delhi chair. So yes, so actually, Rakesh's wife used to work with me in advertising. She was heading heading the film department when I was head of creative in Radio Fusion Advertising. So that's how and he used to come and meet his wife, and so that's how we met. Rakesh and I met and sort of got together and so on. So yeah, tha. So yes, it was in a way the first feature film we did together. Uh, the
Right, first
mainstream
feature film.
feature film.
Right,
First feature film we did. Yeah.
right. Let's
Yeah.
talk about Delhi 6 for a minute.
Yeah.
My question is a little bit long, so just bear with me for a minute.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Uh, Delhi 6 is a film that holds a mirror to the society, figuratively and literally. There are
Mm.
scenes where you guys literally held a mirror to all the main characters in the films. The idea
Yeah.
about introspecting, looking inwards, khud mein jhaakna.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk about that idea and why you guys decided to do that literally
Yeah.
as well?
I'll tell you. Sometime around the year 2000, Delhi had this attack of what they call Monkey Man. I don't know if you remember the history of that period. Monkey Man was supposed to be this kind of invisible kind of creature who used to attack people in the dark. Monkey Man became a kind of menace. Monkey Man. So Rakesh came to me with this idea: can we do something about Monkey Man? Because all kind of theories were going around old Delhi in that area. The area called Delhi Six. Near the Chandni Chowk Jama Masjid area of Delhi called Delhi Six. Delhi Six is a great place because it has its own identity. Not only that, there are bus routes in Delhi going to Delhi 6. You know, it has its own personality and identity, and the way people talk, the way people react and respond is unbelievable. It's so beautiful and engaging. In fact, I stayed in Delhi for a couple of weeks, as a Rakesh guest to absorb the environment of old Delhi. So he said, can we do something? So I remember that, in one of the news reports, there were some theories that whether this monkey man is a Hindu or a Muslim. वो क्या है? There are all kind of theories. And only in India you can have those kind of theories. This monkey man who is invisible, and the way people used to describe, the victims used to describe him, he was like a chimpanzee to a gorilla to a huge monster kind of thing. All kind of people giving all kind of interpretations. And what was happening was basically the fear inside the people. The fear were getting projected in the form of this monkey man. He was not a reality as such, as far as I understand. It wasn't a real thing. It was the fear of the individuals being projected, embodied in this huge, the monkey man mystery. So I wove this, and I thought that's a very good device uh, to take India to the world, literally, what we Indians are all about. So that's how the story I worked out is the boy comes from US who's almost half American, and he finds this place, a strange place, old Delhi, full of strange people. And he falls in love with this girl. That was the love story part, with this girl, he also falls in love with India. He hates India, but he ends up falling in love with India. But this monkey man idea, and because he was coming from America, so we had a whole sequence where we tried to uh, just expose visual elements from America with India. The Statue of Liberty, with Ganpati, with the Taj Mahal, with something else American, and so on and so forth. Because that is the time when perhaps the world was becoming intermingling so much that individual identities were getting lost. India was becoming America, America was becoming India, and all kind of things were going on. So But I wanted to really handle it like a comedy. I wanted to write it like, my big fat Greek wedding about the people of old Delhi. But somehow, I don't know what thought Rakesh had, and the last half hour, sort of it went haywire, and Amitabh Bachchan going to heaven, having jalebis, and Abhishek almost dying. It was not really part of my script. My script, the only philosophical line I had in my script was that a Hindu and a Muslim can become a monkey, but a monkey can't be a Hindu or a Muslim. That was the only philosophical statement I had written in my draft, that a Hindu or a Muslim can be a monkey, but a monkey can't be a Hindu or a Muslim. As simple as that. But Rakesh had this, special, interest in making things philosophical, etc. Maybe an effect of Ox, perhaps. So he went a little haywire, and but yes, we tried to do something very different on a very different level. And again, I feel that perhaps Delhi Six was a little ahead of its time. Perhaps the audience was not mature enough or sensitive enough to respond to what we were trying to do and to show and to say. So it didn't do too well, but now I think I rate it as one of the most interesting films I have written, in spite of everything. But the things would have been perhaps better if it had remained just a comedy and not become too philosophical.
And
Yeah.
what did you think about the ending? Do you think it would have been better if Abhishek had actually not survived for the story?
See, to begin with, the ending was not there in my script, in my draft at all. My draft was very simple, happy ending. The girl is in love with him. He gets the girl, and he goes back to America with his old grandmother. That's it. Because which is why he had come to India to take her back to America. But this death and life was totally irrelevant to the story, unnecessary to the story, whether he lives or dies, because that was not the story. The story was not his life or his death. The story was, okay, what is this country in the first place? I'm a man, a boy who is coming from America. He's discovering India through this girl. And in the process, he falls in love with this girl. And then whether he remains in India or he goes back to US, that was the only dilemma. I think if I remember right, in my drop, he remains in India. Sorry, yeah, he remains in India. He doesn't go back to America, and he becomes an Indian, almost literally, believing in everything that is Indian and so on. So ending again, I said because uh, perhaps the ending was too ambitious. They they try to be too philosophical, this and that, going to heaven, the for the father son having jalebis in heaven. I don't know why it was done. I still keep asking Rakesh, why did he do that? It was not part of the story. But I think sometimes you get too ambitious. Sometimes you get too ambitious, and you want to try this and try that. Uh, but I am in that context. I'm very certain about the story part. Okay, your loyalty should be to the story, not you shouldn't try to show off. Either show off your skill or show off your intellectual or philosophical depth. A storytelling is storytelling. It's not philosophizing. A bit of philosophy is harmless. It can be used in the service of the story, but don't overload a story, because people do not go to a theater to watch philosophy. They want to watch a story. That's it. End of story. And for me, the ending was he stays in India and he becomes a part of the routine called India. I say routine uh, in Delhi 6. In fact, very funnily, I'll explain to you what the ending was. See, around that time when I was writing Delhi 6, there was this very funny thing happening in India. Suddenly there was this rumor that Ganpati is drinking milk. So in all the Ganpati temples, people were lining, for miles to feed milk to Ganpati idol. Suddenly this Ganpati idol, the stone idol of Ganpati, the rumor was that he's drinking milk all over India. Many big people, many politicians were in the queue with milk, trying to feed milk to Ganpati. My ending was that this hero who comes from America, who is a non-believer, is ending in the queue with his wife, the girl, with milk to feed the Ganpati. So he has become so
Oh
Indian.
wow, yeah, he has assimilated. Yeah.
This was the ending of my script. And not only that, if you remember, in the film there were two boys. Remember the two boys, two little boys, young boys? They are also in the queue with ice cream. And the film ends was the debating, if the Ganpati is drinking milk, why can't he have ice cream? So, so my ending was that, not what you're talking about. So yes, so for me that was the identity because this guy has assimilated himself into Indian ethos completely. Like now he believes that Ganpati can drink milk. So why not?
Kamlesh, you also worked with Feroz Khan, and I cannot let you
Yeah,
go
yeah.
without asking you what was it like working with Feroz Khan? It must have been a lot of fun.
Feroz was a really great guy. Uh, Actually, he was a huge fan of my writing. I was not very keen to write the kind of films he was making. Frankly, I'll be very honest about that. That the kind of films he wanted to make, or he made, or he was going to make, was not the kind of films that I would love to write. But he was such a sweet guy. He was a big star, Feroz Khan. He came to my house and he said, "I love your writing, and you have to write my film. You don't have a choice." And he disarmed me. He disarmed me. But the kind of personality he had, and the kind of conviction he had, and the way he made his films. Yes, I've admired his film. I admired his Kurbani. I've admired a couple of his other films. So even though I didn't really agree with the kind of cinema he was making, I did agree to write because out of respect for him. He's such a sweet guy, and I'm an amazing man. I can't describe you, and so generous in every which way. And he was like, uh, like royalty. He he really lived like royalty in Bangalore, where he had his farmhouse. He really lived like royalty. He really lived king size his life, and that is the same way he used to treat everyone, including his writer and so on. So yes, I had great fun working with him, and because he just took me because he loved my writing, I said, okay, I will actually give him what he wants. So Yalgaar is a film. Many people in the industry feel that Yalgar is not a film to be watched, but a film to be heard. If you just hear the film, switch off the video, just hear the sound. It sounds like a really fantastic film, a big, really big classic. And I had great fun writing the dialogue. Kabir Bedi and Sanju and Firoz and Mukesh Khanna and all that. I really great fun. It was his kind of filmmaking, and for better or worse, that was his style of filmmaking. So even though that was not my kind of cinema, I wrote it because I love the guy. Simple as that. Sometimes I do that. Yeah.
लेकिन वो कमबख्त चीज जिसे जिंदगी कहते हैं उसके लिए कदम कदम पे मरना पड़ता है.
Ah. Yeah, that's why I said he enjoyed my writing.
I bet you he loved those lines, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah, all the lines. I mean, he used to go crazy. He used to complain. Why didn't I meet you before? Why didn't I meet you before? In fact, just before he died, he wanted to make a sequel to Kurbani. He discussed it with me. In fact, he had recorded a song, the same song which had become very popular in Kurbani. "Aap jaisa koi meri zindagi mein aaye," that song. So he had re-recorded that song, with different lyrics for the sequel, and he wanted me to write the sequel, and we were working on it. I think for some time. Then, of course, he got cancer and he died. So yes, and basically he was uh, his mind was from the cinema of the 60s, from films like Mughal Azam, and those dialogue oriented movies, the movies which had this fabulous dialogue, verbose, much larger than life kind of personalities. And he was a huge fan of that kind of cinema. So for him, I used to write that. Yes, I love the guy.
And finally, Kamlesh, my last question to you. For an artist, the process of honing one's talent never ends. No matter how long you have
Yeah,
been practicing your art, even after
yeah,
decades of experience, you're always learning new things and fine tuning your craft, your method.
yeah, yeah.
What are some of the key screenwriting lessons that you have learned over your long illustrious career?
This is something totally unexpected for you as well as your listeners. Why do we need stories? In almost 30 years, I've been writing movies and watching a lot of movies, Indian movies, Hollywood, and eh, European movies, and so on. Even the art cinema of the 60s, you know, European cinema, Antonioni, Fellini, Godard, Ingmar Bergman, so on. Why do we need stories in the first place? Why man needs stories? Why can't we do without stories? What's wrong with us? I mean, if you have something to eat, something to drink, a woman or a man to love, house, roof under, over your head, why do you need stories as well? Why can't you do without stories? And I figured that stories play a very important part. Life, whosoever you are, wherever you are, however successful you are, there is a feeling that life is unfair. You're not getting what you deserve. Good guys are losing, bad guys are winning. As we that I'm talking about the general perception in around that good guys are losing, bad guys are winning. We are not getting what I deserve, not getting the attention, the money, the fame, whatever else, etc. We generally believe the life is unfair. And then, of course, anything happens in life unpredictable without any rhyme or reason. We don't know. We have no way to explain why something happens, whether to us or around us. That is immaterial, but happens. There's no reason, there's no logic behind certain things to happen or not happen. The stories play a very important role there. Why we need stories? At least in the stories for cinema, the good guys ultimately win. Bad guys lose or get punished. Movies give hope. Movies give hope to us. At least in movies, good guys are winning. Though, of course, a lot of struggle, suffering, etc. But ultimately, they win, they get rewarded, they get the girl or get the property or get the whatever they want to get. Bad guys lose or get punished. Second thing, at least in a cinema, in a film, something happens because something has happened before. And because something is happening now, something will happen as a consequence. There's a logical cause and effect order. There's order in cinema. In life, there's no order. At least we can't see it, the order. In life in general, if we try to look very serious, very sincerely, we can't find the order. We don't know why it is happening, why there's such a huge pandemic all over the world. What went wrong? What did we do? Why are we suffering? Why are we locked down in our houses and working from home and things like that? We don't know. We can't explain it. But in cinema, at least, there is always a cause and effect order. That gives hope. Cinema, basically, stories give us hope. So, for a film to work, for a film to work, I know some people make a film because for them it's an ego trip. Oh, I'm so and so, and I must make this film, and to hell with you as an audience. You are not smart enough to appreciate my film. To hell with you. I don't subscribe to that idea. And there are some people who make films because they have to they have to pay the bills. They have to pay the bills. That's it. They are not passionate about cinema. They are not in love with cinema. For them, cinema is just bread and butter and paying the bills. Or for some, it is an ego trip. They both are wrong attitudes to cinema, which is why 90% of our Hindi films flop because either they are made as an ego trip or they are made to pay the bills. People are not very serious about their love for cinema. But still there are 8 or 10% still there who are insanely in love with cinema. And the films which work are the films which can give this hope to the audience. For me, a good film starts after the film is over in the theater, after the end credits, and the film comes home with me and becomes a part of my heart and mind. I can replay the film in my mind again and again. And that's how the film remains with me. That is for me a definition of a good film. Not it has done so much business in box office and all that shit that you hear in the media. 200 crores, 300 crores, bullshit. No one is doing 300 crores. That is a PR job. Every producer, every actor has these PR companies. They're investing huge money in the PR, and the PR job is to announce to the world that this film has done 300 crore and 400 crore and XYZ and so on. All bullshitting. They are simply making a fool of the people and the audience. For me, a good film is not a reflection of the box office success. Of course, it will succeed at box office, but if it comes home with you after it is over in the theater, it comes home with you, then the film has worked for you. Otherwise, forget it. For me, that's as simple as that. Yeah,
Makes
yeah,
sense. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if it that's what we say, right? If the film stays with you after you've left the
yes,
theater, and
yeah,
that may not reflect at the box office, but it will reflect
yeah,
in what you take home. Fantastic.
yeah,
Great.
yeah,
This was great,
yeah.
Kamlesh. I had a really
My
great time
pleasure.
chatting with you.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Yes, definitely I enjoyed it. Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
So, thank you very much, Kamlesh. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
If you liked the episode, do spread the word. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast where you listen to your podcasts. Also, do drop us a review in Apple Podcasts when you get a chance. For an independent free podcast like this one, good reviews make a big difference. So please do take a minute and review us in Apple Podcasts. Or if you listen to your podcast somewhere else, do spread the word on Twitter. It would be much appreciated. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Love of Cinema SF8 for podcast related updates and my tweets on all things movies. That's the episode. This is Himanshu signing off. And like always, thank you for listening to the Love of Cinema podcast.